In Saudi Arabia right now, NBC's Arthur Kent, who has been up these many long hours. Arthur, what's the latest from Saudi Arabia?
Well, Tom, we were trying to confirm that report from Washington. Fred Francis had told us that the Saudi border town of Hafji, just south of Kuwait and very close to Iraqi frontline positions, had been hit by artillery fire. Now, we went to the Saudi government spokesman here, and as we might have expected, no comment was their word. Now, we're in sort of an information blackout here, in particular from the Saudi authorities. And indeed, if you are a Saudi Arabian citizen today, you're somewhat in the dark, even though the sun is up now, because Saudi television is carrying no news of the attack, the U.S.-led attack into Kuwait and Iraq, and radio as well is silent. So very long lag time here for these citizens who are very deeply involved in the conflict, very much further behind than you and I in knowing exactly what's going on.
Okay, NBC's Arthur Kent. We want a continuing. We want to have a continuing update now on the military situation, prospects and concerns of our military experts who are with us. General Bill Odom is in our studio in New York. Listen, it was what, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, that General Waller was saying we won't be ready until mid-February, possibly, to launch some kind of a ground attack. If this airstrike fails, will the ground forces be ready?
Well, I think the coordination of the attack, the sequence, is important. By starting it earlier, it's a much tighter schedule to get the ground forces that are coming in from Europe ready for the campaign. Obviously, they can go ahead with the ground campaign without some of these forces from Europe having completely closed. But I think there is a little disadvantage for the ground forces to start earlier rather than later.
But if the airstrike is just 80% effective, that will soften up the ground opposition a lot.
No question about it, but the coordination, and I mean by that, taking advantage of the devastating impact that the airstrikes have soon enough is important. If a certain amount of time lapses, the Iraqis will get over it, and they will repair their positions, restore their weapons, and they will be more difficult to deal with.
We want to go to Washington now. Retired Rear Admiral Kenneth Moranville, who is an expert on naval aviation, is there with Colonel Harry Summers. Admiral Moranville, what happens day 2 of an airstrike of this kind? Planes lifting off from the carriers out in the Persian Gulf?
I would expect that. I've heard lots of people discuss that we could do a good job at night out there in a war with the Iraqis. I think we can do equally as good a job in the daytime. The problem's a little bit different. They're able to sight you with visual sighting devices in the daytime, but our tactics will permit us to go and hit the targets in the daytime as well, and I would expect to see lots more airplanes if we do it in the daytime, because you don't have the problem not being able to see each other in the daytime.
And what kind of aircraft will we be using in your judgment? Will they continue to go to the heavy fighter bombers like the Stealth and the F-111 and keep the F-15s and the F-16s, for that matter, for a different kind of close air support?
I would expect to see all types in the daytime battle. The commanders will plan, if they have specific missions that they want to fly at night and they need to reserve some airplanes for those missions, they'll do that. But I would not anticipate they would withhold airplanes if they're available to fly. I would think that we would do an all-out effort and launch all we had.
And Colonel Harry Summers, weigh in with me for a moment here on what General Odom and I were talking about a few moments ago about the preparation of those forces that just got down there from Europe, which is a whole different kind of theater from a military point of view.
Exactly, although I must say, 7th Army has been for years our best Army forces. We've kept them at a high state of readiness because of the Soviet threat. They're very well trained. They have a training center in Europe, not like the Desert Training Center, but one very capable. So these are very good troops. They're highly trained. Readiness is always, you never have 100%, and the commander in the field must be convinced that he's able to move. Otherwise, I don't think the president would have made the strike.
All right, we're going to do the television equivalent here of kind of four-corner tag. We have NBC's Fred Francis at the Pentagon. We want to keep Admiral Moranville and Colonel Summers there in Washington. and General Bill Odom on the air in New York. Fred, what are the questions on your mind for these experts tonight?
Well, just a bit of news first, Tom. A senior Pentagon official has just told me that the Pentagon and indeed the command center in Saudi Arabia cannot confirm any launches of Scud missiles, Iraqi Scud missiles, and those, of course, are the ground-to-ground missiles, which have a range of approximately 375 miles. So what we're basically talking about is about 4 hours into this, and the Iraqis have apparently not gotten off any of their missiles anywhere towards Israel or anywhere towards Saudi Arabia. So that is the news, and we can only surmise from that that a great many of those missiles were knocked out. And I would ask Ken Moranville, you know, how you go after the rest of those targets, because it's just not the Scud missiles that he has. He has these other launchers with what they call frog missiles, and they're much shorter range. When aircraft go in, do they blind them with countermeasures, and how could you get the folks at home to understand countermeasures? You know, what actually happens in that kind of environment when the attacks roll in during the day? Admiral Randall.
Well, there are two types of attack that you might make. If you want to go in low and surprise him and go in under the radar horizon and go low enough so that they're not going to detect you in time to shoot you down, and most of the surface-to-air missiles do not have a great low-altitude capability, and I'm talking about very low, nap of the earth flying. That's one way. And you would not rely on a lot of countermeasures to protect you. If you have another target that you want to send that you need to get a lot of bombs on in a hurry to kill the target, then you might go in at a higher altitude. And the problem there, if you're at the higher altitude, of course, you're in the heart of the missile envelope. That's when you would rely on jamming aircraft on your own self-protective ECM gear. And the way that works, those jammers go with the strike.
After
they jam the enemy acquisition and tracking radars. If they do, or if they are able to see through the jamming and launch a missile at an aircraft, the aircraft, those that have defensive ECM gear, energize that, and that gear causes the missile to miss the aircraft.
So is this is the electronic warfare we've heard so much about over the years?
Yes.
Is that what we're seeing here? And can you correlate this with, or can you analyze this with what happened in the raid on Libya? I mean, was this much the same thing, much the same missile environment?
The raid on Libya was done all at very low altitude. It was the kind of a raid that you do if you're going to start and you try seeking surprise. They went in very low. Now the Libyans did shoot missiles, and they even shot missiles straight up in the air with what we call ballistic shots. And they knew the missile was not locked on an aircraft when it was launched, but they launched them anyway. One of the problems you have when you do that is with the AAA, what we call AAA. Those are guns.
Anti-aircraft guns.
Anti-aircraft guns, and they have all sizes of them. Some will reach up to considerable altitude, 15,000, 18,000 feet. They also have the 23mm gun, which is extremely dangerous if you're down low. So that's the problem you have if you're trying to do a sneak raid. And if you find that he has a lot of those small caliber guns, the 23mm, they're very accurate, and they can shoot a hose of lead at you.
So we've been doing a lot of flag waving here. The cold hard assessment is that in a daylight attack, we're quite likely to lose some aircraft coming off those carriers and coming off the bases in Saudi Arabia. Is that not correct, Admiral Moranville?
I would expect that we would have some aircraft hit by AAA. If you're going to deliver a bomb on a target, you either got to dive bomb right at it, or you've got to fly right over it. And when you have to do that, if there's defenses in the target area, it's a pretty good shot for a duck shooter to shoot an airplane down.
Colonel Summers, you know the disposition of the forces in Iraq, southern Iraq, and in Kuwait. You know, he has something like 4,000 tanks. He has 3,000 artillery pieces dug in there. You know, he has almost 400,000 troops dug in there. How long would it take in airstrikes, in the so-called air-land battle that this Pentagon has talked about so much, how long would it take to pummel them into submission?
Well, that's very hard to say. I mean, with any troops, you don't know how much shock they can take. I would say that the kind of devastating attacks they're going to get from the B-52s from the air will really try their morale and could very well break them, but we can't count on that. I think we've got to count on going in on the ground and taking them out. And